and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. As you know, I've been answering questions these last 2 or 3 weeks, and I want to continue today by doing that. And there was a lady who came up to me just 2 or 3 days ago and asked me a question. She said she'd been learning the recorder for 2 months and she'd been watching the show. And I applaud anyone who's learning music because it adds such a richness to your life. But she was having a problem, and I decided to discuss it today because if she's having a problem, it means more than one person is having it. She's a new musician, new to music, and when she started out the recorder, she decided to play an alto because an alto has such a rich, deep tone, a better tone than a soprano. I have brought 2 of my altos with me. I have probably about 3 or 4 of them made by the same company, and I'm going to use the one that's cream colored because I think you're going to be able to see the tone holes a lot better than this. But let me play both of them just so you get a sense of their pitch and their tone. They're a very lovely instrument, and they don't have keys, and they have a deeper tone than the soprano. So let me just run up and down the scale with these. Now let me do the same for this. They're made by the same company. They're both Baroques. They're both about the same size, but one is dark colored, looking like wood, although it's not really wood. It's designed a little bit differently, but it looks like wood, and this is a plastic. This one I think doesn't have quite the rich tone that that does. You have to remember that even though you have instruments that are alike, 2 alto saxophones, 2 tenor saxophones, 2 flutes, there will be a little bit of individual differences between the instruments because they're not exactly alike. Even if produced by the same company in the same key, they're still not exactly alike. They have the idiosyncrasies. Well, she started out, the woman who had the problem, with the alto. And she was having a problem with finger stretches. And she was having a trouble with the 4th finger being able to hit the note that she wanted to hit. So what she did to remedy the situation was she was not using that, and she's trying to use her pinky finger to cover the note. Now I'm going to ask you, please never do it. It's absolutely not the wrong thing to do. You cannot make substitutions on fingers. You really can't do that, because if you try doing that, you have one finger that's not playing right, and not playing at all, and it's interfering with all of the other fingers. Now I don't know whether it was this 4th finger or this 4th finger. Wouldn't make a difference. If you try to substitute fingers, you have one finger not working, and it's getting in the way of all the other fingers. And you cannot go down the scale, you cannot play the notes right, and you have to remember that each hole, each finger hole where you put your fingers, it was crafted and designed to be a certain size and a certain shape, placed in a certain place, so it would be natural for your fingers to fall on them. I mean, and you have to remember also that always with the recorders, you have a thumb hole in the back. They all have them. Some other instruments have them too, but all the recorders have them. And if you switch your fingers around, you're going to switch the position of your hand, and when you do that, you may find it difficult to cover the hole for the tone hole for the recorder in the back of it. The tone hole in the back, which is called the thumb hole, is closed most of the time and covered most of the time. There are maybe 2 notes where you don't need it. And other notes you use a half hole if you want an octave, but either the hole is partially covered or wholly covered, except for the possibility of about 2 notes. So, and you've got to remember that the alto has a lot of finger stretches, and you have to get used to that. It's a lot bigger than the soprano. This is a soprano. I think if you're a beginning student, you're much better off getting the soprano to begin with, because the soprano does not have the large finger stretches. It's true it doesn't have the tone of the alto. The alto really is a very nice instrument. But on the other hand, you don't have to stretch. Well, let me play a little on this alto. I want to show you where you wouldn't use your thumb. Here's the D. With this D, I don't need to use any thumb at all. The only thing that's going to support the instrument is your lips. And you have, of course, your right hand down here on the instrument, and your mouth. Now, the C needs the tone hole. You have the thumb hole here, and you have fingered the C like this. This is a C. And that C is right here. And then if you want the C sharp, you still have the thumb hole in operation for the C sharp, but you don't use any of the left hand fingers. And then when you get to the D, which is this note right here, you use the middle finger of your left hand and no other fingers of your left hand. Now, there is an alternate fingering for the D, which I sometimes use depending upon what I'm playing. And I do it sometimes the way that the flute does it. The way that the flute plays a D is you have all these 6 fingers down and you lift the top finger. So you end up by having 2 fingers down, 3 in the right hand, 2 on the left, and the tone hole for the thumb is covered. Sometimes it's handier for me to use that than it is to take everything off except this one finger. Whoops. The reason I got a higher note was that I had my fingers down in the right hand. And normally you just kind of keep them up. So anyway, you do need to have your finger covered. An alto is a beautiful instrument, but you have to consider the finger stretches. Now, a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of people say this, that if you have long fingers, it's a help. Because if you're going to be playing piano, well, in piano, you've got all the notes right beside each other, like this little keyboard right here. All the notes right beside each other. And the long fingers on a regular size piano are probably helpful. But in other instruments, you have to consider the width of the fingers, not just the length of the fingers. The length of the fingers can be important. I mean, if I had little tiny short stubby fingers, I would have trouble too. But the width of the fingers is important for the stretch of the notes. There you can see there's quite a stretch here, there's quite a stretch here, quite a stretch here. And then going from that 4th finger down to the lowest, this little finger controls 2 notes, actually. They're smaller holes. And this is another thing you have to understand about recorders and other wind instruments. When they're designed, these holes are not necessarily the same size, and they don't usually, they don't usually go straight up and down. They are sometimes maneuvered a little to each side so that they fit more naturally with the shape of your hand. Now, my suggestion would be for a person with a problem like this is your first instrument is you're probably going to be better off getting a little soprano, the soprano recorder. Your best bet is go to a regular music store because they have the best brands and have them point you to a brand that they think is really good. There are several out there that are really good, so I don't really want to give any specific names here, but you can get a very high quality, not too expensive recorder. And for $10, $15 or so, you can get one that plays really well. And remember, always a tone hole in the back. But the finger stretches aren't much. It's easy to do it. did I get the high D? I just slipped my finger a little bit down on the tone hole, half hold it really, and that pushed me up an octave. So this would be the best thing. And also remember that if you're not used to playing an instrument and this is your first one, when you play this and keep playing it, your hands may well become more flexible. And when the hands become more flexible, it's going to be easier to stretch for keys. So if you want to play an alto, you may want to play a melody flute first. And then as your fingers get more flexible, you won't have such a hard time stretching. Now I realize that some people have difficulties because their hands are small and they have difficulties with a larger instrument. And if you have that problem, you may need to stay with a soprano. And there's nothing wrong with that. The soprano plays a lot of really good music. I've arranged classical music on it. For Handel's Messiah, I've done Worthy is the Lamb, the Alleluia Chorus, for Unto Us a Child is Born, a Son is Given, all of those songs that come from Handel's Messiah. I've arranged them all on a simple melody recorder, C melody recorder, and I play them, and they sound great. Let me just, for the sake of comparison, show you the importance of having your hands at the right place at the right time. And I'm going to show you first this little song flute. The little song flute, it has really quite a good tone. It only plays about an octave. It does have a tone hole in the back, so you have to keep your thumb on it. But notice that, if you can, notice that they're raised. These are all raised. The notes are, the holes are, but not by the same amount. And you have them in a different shape. This kind of slants a little here, and then it slants and curves here. So you have to get your hands on right. And the reason being, it tries to follow the natural shape of your hands. And when you do it, it's very comfortable. If I were to try to switch something like this, it wouldn't play right. I'd have one finger in the way. I wouldn't be able to get the lower notes. And they wouldn't be comfortable because they design these so that the holes are geared for the size of the fingers that are going on them. I bring this in because there are a lot of schools that use either flutophones, recorders, song flutes, or tonettes when they're beginning to teach music. And this is a good little instrument. It actually is a good little instrument. The tonette, I've had it here before, but here you have the tone hole, but they also have a thumb rest. So your thumb will go right on it. That's not connected to a note. It's not open, but the tone hole on top is. So here again, if you look at the size and the shape, this forms a curve. This is another thumb rest. So you put 1, 2, 3, and here you got your little finger. I called it a thumb rest. I mean a finger rest. This little rest right here, it's not open. You put your little pinky finger there, and then your first finger of the right hand goes almost opposite. They could touch each other. And I think the reason that it's designed this way is to keep the finger where it's supposed to be, keep the pinky finger where it's supposed to be. And you follow that curve. You've got your thumb where it's supposed to be. You've got your other thumb on the thumb rest. Every finger is where it's supposed to be. Now, this is not such a good tone as the song flute. It's a little tonette. Passable, but nothing to write home about. But that's just the way the little tonettes are. But here again, it shows you how important it is to have your fingers on at the right time and the right place. Another possibility that I'm just going to show you, here we have, it's a melody flute, and put out by a company called Melody. And all of these, if you can look at it, all of these finger holes have been raised. So if I put my fingers on them as they're supposed to be, there's nothing for the lower finger. That's free. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 2 little areas here where you put your thumbs, left and right, and everything's raised. You can easily feel where it's supposed to be. This is a real inexpensive one, but it does play. So everyone, if you look at this one, the notes are also raised. It's not, it looks like it's the orange one with a different color, but it's not. It's put out by a different company. Everything is raised up with a place to put your thumbs in the background, no tone hole. But if I tried to change that, you're going to get mixed up. Here's a finger. It's not doing anything. Where's it going to go? Just sit up there? You know, so you have to keep your hands at the right place. Some other people make the mistake of trying to put the right hand on top and the left hand on the bottom. It just is not supposed to be that way. Left hand always goes on top. These are not raised, but you can feel because of the hole that they're indented. And always left hand on top, right hand on the bottom, thumb on the thumb hole, and then this little finger is free to handle these 2 little notes that are on the bottom. I hope you can see that okay. With a thumb hole in the back, there's no specific place to put your right thumb, so you just put it anywhere in the back where it's kind of comfortable. But in this vein, I also want to show you, this is a B-flat penny whistle. There is no tone hole in the back. There's no specific area where you put your thumb, but it follows the same principle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it might be easier to play if you have trouble with stretching your fingers. This is a B-flat. It's a little bit larger than you would get for the smaller ones. The smaller ones like the E-flat or the D-flat might be more appropriate, but this is easy to see. But you notice here, this little tone hole is not as large as the others. They're a little bit different in size. They have been specially geared to accommodate the size of your hands and the size of your individual fingers, because your fingers aren't the same size either. And if you have trouble stretching, it might be easy for you to get a penny whistle, because if your thumb slips or it moves or it's in a different position, you're not going to do any harm because you're not trying to cover a tone hole. That's the kind of thing you get into when you get into the recorder. I brought in some others. For you to see. I know people like to see the colors, but that's basically what I have to say on that. If you have any questions at all, if you're having any trouble at all, please email me and leave your name and your number, and I will call you right back, because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks for a show to air, so you might have to wait if you're just waiting for an answer. I just as soon answer you as soon as I get a call or get an email. This is a fife, and I just want to mention about the fifes. I have mentioned it before. It's basically a round hole that you blow into. It's flat with the wood around it. You notice, however, there's a difference in the size of the finger holes. And if you put something in that's the wrong size, if you try another finger than the finger that's supposed to be there, it will not be a comfortable fit. You will not be able to play the lower notes. It just doesn't work. And if you try to do the right hand on top instead of the left, it may feel all right to you because, you know, you have your fingers on the holes, but it isn't right. There's only one instrument I've ever seen where you reverse that left on top, right on the bottom, and the only instrument I've ever seen that does it, and I had it in here, is an Israeli flute that has two bodies and two mouthpieces, and you play them both at the same time. Most people don't even have one. You probably will never see one. You saw mine because I had it and I brought it in. Other things I want to mention about the fife, and any instrument, it's any instrument that's a wind instrument, it's always closed on one end and opened on the other end. And the place where it's closed, I brought this straw just to show you. I can only get it in so far. It won't go in any further because that's closed off. The flutes, the piccolos, any instrument that's a woodwind and a brass, it has to be closed on one end so the air goes all in one direction. If I blew in and this was open, the air would go everywhere. You would not get a tone. So with the fifes, with the wind instruments, that's the case. Now with my piccolo, they have a little cap on the end of flutes and piccolos. This is a piccolo. And the mouthpiece is a hole, but it's raised up. There's a form around it, and you just put it under your lip. It's easier to play, I think, than the fifes. But here it is. It's closed off on one side. The air just goes along on the other side. I want to show you, while I have time, we don't have as much time as I thought. This is a walking stick flute. I have two of them. I know I brought the other one in. I don't remember whether I brought this one in. And it is closed on both ends. You have this all closed. This is all closed too. So it is a fife. It plays like a fife. It's got that hole for the woodwinds that you just blow across, and it's basically flat to the rest of the instrument. So where does the air go? It actually goes out here. This is a hole. It is not a finger hole. There's no way that once I get my fingers in position on this, and the holes are pretty straight, there is a little difference in the size of them to accommodate your fingers, but there's no way when I get my hands there that I could stretch that little finger to go down here. So instead of having it open on the bottom, what they do is make a special hole, and it's as if it was open on the bottom. Since the instrument goes so far down, all the air, when you blow across it, this is blocked, and this is the open area where the air comes out. That's the way that it's arranged, so you can play it. It's quite large. I have played it before. I do play it once in a while. And then for the tenor, if you think you'll have trouble on finger stretches on an alto, the tenor has a very great stretch for some of the notes. It's hard to get the notes because the stretch is so large. But they do have a key on the bottom to help you out, but of course you have to have the thumb hole covered, just like you would on any other instrument. It's a very nice instrument to play. That's that D where I don't use that finger. Has a very nice tone to it, and it's larger. Generally speaking, if you're a new student and you're starting out doing wind instruments, and the recorder's a good place to start because you learn lots of basic music skills, and it can add as a springboard for other instruments to come later on, such as clarinet, flute, saxophone, and so forth. But if it's your first instrument, you're really better off in getting a simple melody, and then a melody flute, a C melody flute. Get a good high quality one, and then learn to play it, and you'll have exercise for your fingers. You'll get more flexibility for your fingers. It's excellent for your lungs. It can pop the lungs. When I had my heart surgery, my doctor, my cardiologist said, whatever you do, Pat, take an instrument, at least one recorder, to the hospital and play it. It'll help to open up and get those lungs working again. And of course I was fortunate because I never smoked, so my lungs came back better because of that. But this is a good place to start. You can play all kinds of music with it. It has a nice tone. The more expensive they are, the nicer tone they are. They don't match an alto, but they have a good tone. You can play complicated or simple music. So that's the best place to start. And with it, you can get the flexibility to play other instruments if you want to go on to another kind of traditional instrument. So we will close it here because I'm running out of time. And if you have any questions, let me know. Leave your number, leave your name. I'll call you right back and answer your questions. And we will continue on with answering questions next time. Please join me then.